Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. We'll just wait a couple of minutes to let everyone log in and then we'll start shortly. Thank you to everyone who's joining us. We'll just give everyone another minute to log in and get settled, and then I'll introduce you to our speakers. Thank you to everyone who's joining us. I'll get started and just go through some housekeeping, and then I'll introduce you to our presenters. So firstly, I'd just like to let everyone know that when you enter this webinar, you are muted and your video is turned off. This is just because there are a lot of you online. We want to make sure that there's no background noise. If you do want to communicate with us, you can scroll down to the bottom of the Zoom page and you'll see the toolbar pop up, and it will have question and answers and the chat function. So please put in the question and answers any questions you may have. This will be seen by everybody. If you have something private you'd like to ask us or the panelists, please feel free to put that in the chat function, and that could be anything technical questions. I'll be monitoring this with my colleague during the session, and we'll be able to troubleshoot any issues you may be having. We are recording this session, and everyone will receive this recording via email 1 to 2 weeks after today. I'll now pass you over to our two presenters. Firstly, we have Kate McGough, who is a senior publisher here at Nelson Primary. And then we have Nick Medlock, who's our technical product manager. They'll be walking us through a live demonstration of PM eCollection on both the iOS app and a desktop web browser. At the end, we'll have a Q&A session. So please feel free to write all of your questions in that Q&A button down the bottom there, and we'll save them all until the end. Thank you. I'll hand over to Kate and Nick.
Thanks, Steph. Hi, everyone, and welcome. Should we get started, Nick? Let's just launch straight into it. So, yes, thank you, everyone, for attending. Over the past year, Nick and I and Nelson Primary have had the privilege of working closely with customers on PM eCollection and hearing stories about how they're using PM eCollection at home and at school as well. So we've put this webinar together really just to address some of the questions that have come up, and also hopefully just to give you some tips on using PM eCollection, whether it's at home or in the classroom. So right now we are looking at the PM eCollection bookshelf, which is being displayed on an iPad that is with Nick, and Nick will be showing us some tips on using the iPad. So in this view, when you log into PM eCollection as a teacher, you will see all 400 ebooks that are part of the bookshelf, but you're able to personalize this bookshelf for your students, and we'll show you how to do this a bit later, so that the display for the students, you can limit the number of books that they're reading and viewing. But as a teacher, you see you have access to every book on the bookshelf. In this current view at the moment, there are no sessions displayed and there are no notes. We'll show you how to do this through the student management section. So I think we should just launch straight into it. And the first bit that we're going to, the first tip is around using the ebooks. So Nick, do you want to just quickly sort of start launching an ebook?
Yep. Yeah, so we're going to use one of the books that I haven't downloaded onto this device first, which is Little Bird and the Bath. So you can see here I've got a couple that I've downloaded and these ones that haven't yet been downloaded. So click on that. Once it's downloaded, I can actually, a new feature that we added that not many people know about, and I don't know if you can see it, but just swipe across as well if I want to see those teacher notes. Once I'm ready to go in and read the book, just hit read, and that will load up the first page of the book.
Fantastic, and thanks, Nick. And Nick, do you want to just go back to display the ways that we can read the ebook in 3 different ways through the reading mode?
Yeah, so easiest way to get there when you're on the iPad is just using the swipe up feature. So hold anywhere on the screen and move up, and that'll bring up your menu. You can use that to go home back to your bookshelf if you want, but you can also change your reading mode. So you've got the independent, the guided, and custom reading profiles.
Fantastic. And the independent reading mode is the default view that you will get and that your students will get. And that means in the independent reading mode, you will, and all the students will experience audio and have also a recording themselves functionality as well. If you click into the guided reading mode, the audio and recording functions are disabled. So they're not part of it, which is really useful when you are working in a group setting, in a guided reading setting. And the last mode is the custom reading mode. And there's options that you can select. So for example, at the moment, the text in the book is displayed, but you could opt in to disable that so that all the text is hidden, and therefore that book becomes a wordless text. And as you can see there, there are some other functions available. So typically for us, teachers and students are using the ebooks in shared reading of the text. So whether it is over Zoom while you're teaching and learning remotely, but this is great for creating conversations, for building vocabulary, and just sort of having that group response to the text. They're used, of course, for the guided reading sessions, which is great for highlighting words and other language features, looking at the text structure, focusing on reading behaviours and on comprehension strategies. And they're also using them for independent reading at home or in the class. So many schools have their students do a read to self, and the students, they ask the students to use the My List functionality to create a personal word list from reading that text. And Nick will be able to show you how to do this a bit later. But also with the audio that's on, students can hear words individually or hear them in sentences as well. So once we get back into, I think, Nick, you're now in the browser display?
Yeah, just brought in the browser display just to show it's basically the exact same application, but available on browser for anyone that doesn't have access to an iPad device. Can be used on any desktop, laptop, tablets. Could be used on phones, but just because of the size of the screen, definitely not recommended.
So I think really what we should do now is launch into an ebook, and let's look at the drawing and editing tools, because that also shows a really the multiple ways that you can use these ebooks in the classroom or at home.
Yeah, so just quickly, when you're in the web app version, it's not swiping up to get to the menu. You just go down here to the bottom left. And you can click on those hamburger icon and bring up the menu, and you've got the same reading modes and the editing and drawing as well.
Fantastic. So what we often do with the, actually just the view on my screen is it's chopping off that bottom orange bars a little, just a little bit. But those buttons down below will have drawing and editing tools, and the fantastic and recording tools as well. And the fantastic opportunities you have here is that you can take any ebook and you can make it, for example, a wordless picture book. So Nick's doing this by going into custom mode. He disabled the text there.
Yep. And I've left on hearing a word, hear a page, and my words feature. Now, if I go back into viewer, got all of these text is turned off.
That's right. And this is really fantastic that you might do some sequencing activities with your students. You could do oral storytelling, so you could work whole class or small group and work with students to practice telling a story orally. So you can go through that way as well. There's also really great opportunities to do some modelling and shared writing using the ebooks. And we would recommend you do that through the drawing and editing tools. Nick's clicked on the editing tools there, and you can see that the sentence has now been displayed on the page. And Nick can go in and change this sentence if he likes, or change a word from the text as well, and it will save it into that ebook for the session.
Yeah, so that you can't display the edited text in this version over the images. This is just if you're going to be playing around with those sentences. But the drawing tool actually has a feature that can be used as well. So it has the drawing if you need to outline anything on the page. It also has these text boxes. So if you wanted to, you can come in here and you can put a text box and type in something, and then that will show over the page. And while you've got this book open, that will remain there. So you can use that before you're going to read to kids or do an activity, come in and put in these boxes, potentially just blocking out some of the words. And then navigating back to the start of the book.
Fantastic. And I think if we just go back to the standard ebook, Nick, do you want to sort of just go through and we could look at the audio and also creating words and bring them into a My List feature?
Yep. Just to turn words back on.
We just turn that on.
One thing actually that we didn't mention is while you're in that wordless text option, if you've left the audio on, you can still play the page as well. So if you want to have all of the words off, but you want to have still hearing,
the big bird is in the bath too.
You can use that play button, or you can pull down from the top of the screen to get it to play the page. My words feature, my list next, Kate. Yep. So you can do that by right-clicking on any word in a title or holding down on the word if you're using an iPad. You get this pop-up here, which has the word and this little plus symbol. So if I was to add bird to that list, next time that the student goes out to their bookshelf and goes to My Words, they'll be able to see the words that they've added to their list. And you can hear that word as the individual word as it was read from in the book, or the sentence that it was actually in the book as well. And when you want to get rid of it, you can delete that from My Words, or a teacher can also clear that from a student's profile in the management section.
Fantastic. And I think the other functionality that we really need to explore with the ebooks for everybody is the audio and recording. So we've heard the audio where you can have the whole book read to you, you can have individual words read to you, which is a really great feature. And a lot of teachers enjoy the fact that with these books, their students can do independent or silent reading, but they know that students could get support if they can't read a word, and they can also instruct students to add that word, as we saw, Nick, to the My Words list as well. So the other tool, of course, is recording, and it's a very powerful tool, of course, where you could hear students reading the text as well. So there's opportunities to focus on fluency and comprehension. We often recommend that students don't need to read the whole book, just 1 or 2 pages often will do, and that's enough for teachers to get a sense of fluency depending on the level of text. There's retail opportunities because students can actually just record like a retail of the book, and you can go back and listen to that later on. There's opportunities for students to respond to the text. So you could use the notes functionality to put in some prompt questions. The students can read the book, and then they can actually record like responses to the comprehension questions that you may have put in notes. But also it's an opportunity then for you as a teacher to go back and listen to that. And then you can have these fantastic conversations around the text with students at a later time. So sorry, Nick, do you want to just walk through the recording?
So it's pretty easy. Basically, while you're on this page and you haven't recorded anything, you can have the page read to you. And then you have this little recording button. So if I was to press that, It's going to start recording me. And if I stop it, I can see it's successful as now it's saying my recording. So if I was to press this play button, if I was to press that, it's going to start recording me. It's going to record my voice and I'll be able to listen to it back. If you want to go back to hearing the page, you could switch back to that eCollection option. And when you go to the next page, you can make more recordings. While the students still got this book open, they can re-record. So if they read the page once and they don't do well, or they want to do a re-recording of that, they can just click on record again, and it'll be the most recent one that teachers will be able to review in the management system.
Fantastic. And I think, Nick, really speaking of the management system and given the time with the webinar, do you think we should pop over to the management system?
I can do that.
Yeah. So on the student management side of PM eCollection, there are lots of opportunities to ensure personalisation for your students, to ensure feedback for your students and you getting feedback of them reading, and also accountability and data. So Nick, where would you like to start?
Yes, so what I can probably show, I believe I was logged in, let me just exit this book, as a student called Con M at the moment. So what I can do is I can go and find that individual student and view their profile. And what that's going to let me see is I can see where they are for their reading level, recordings that have been made, words that have been saved. So I can go here just quickly and I can see one word has been saved. And this is the feature that I was talking about where the teacher can clear from the iPad. So the teacher can select that and that will remove the word saved from the student's iPad. I can also scroll down the page if I go back here and I can see the reading history. So I can see all of the times that I've opened up Little Bird and the Bath today. I can see how long it was open for, how many words are added, and if recordings were in, that would be showing underneath here as well.
So this section's a really good way, Nick, isn't it, of gauging participation and student engagement with the book, as and how long they haven't just opened it and not and shut it immediately.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Obviously, it's not super time efficient if you have a class of 30 kids that you're wanting to check in on. So you also have the ability to go over to a group and you can see that same level of reporting, but for a group or a class. So if you have your students grouped by class and by group, I believe he was in 2A. I can view this class. Come down here and you get the reading history of today. So at the moment, I'm the only student in this class which is read today. But if there was other students reading, you'd be able to see. And you have readings, over the last week, over the last month, you can see all of those broken down as well. So it just makes it a bit easier instead of having to go into every single student. You can just come here and see what books have been read in the last week, in the last day, etc. And you can also see words saved and recordings from here as well, if you would like to look at that.
If you go back, Nick, are you heading back to the student profile?
Yep.
Fantastic. What we can do is show you here too how to personalize the bookshelf. So we've heard from teachers that they're doing this in a few ways. So some teachers are ensuring, independent reading success at home by ensuring that the books available to the students are around 1 to 2 levels lower than their guided reading level. But others are also using the bookshelf to stretch students too. So they are ensuring that there are titles available that possibly are 1 or 2 levels above their guided reading level. And we can see that Nick's just been adjusting
just the bookshelf slider. So I've just adjusted that to 18 as the bottom and 22 as the top, since the student's level 20. If I was then to come back in, and I think I need to log out and log back in to the system. Now I'm only getting titles on my bookshelf that are from level 18 all the way up to level 22 titles. So that is a good way to restrict it and still give students freedom to explore those books that are on the bookshelf, but it drops off a lot of those, level 1 books and the level 30 that they're not going to be ready for. Just gives them a choice. We do also have, you can combine this bookshelf filtering with sessions. So when you're assigning sessions, you can assign books, and no matter if they're within a student's bookshelf range, it'll still show up in the session. So you could assign a level 5 or 6 book, maybe that's focusing on a topic that you're looking at, even though the student wouldn't be able to find that usually on their bookshelf.
And I think, speaking of sessions, it would let's go and have a look at how we set up a session and where you can add notes, because the notes feature is a really great way to communicate with the group that you've set up or with an individual student as well.
Yeah, so I'll do a session just for a student for the time being, just to easier. Where is Cotton? Yeah, okay. So I'll just add him to this session and attach a book. So yeah, you can have the option of adding groups or classes as well, or adding teachers. So if when you log in, you want to be able to see a session, say if you're going to set it up for a Zoom meeting or something like that, you can add your teacher login, and when you log in, you'll be able to see this session as well. You can switch between guided and independent reading, so that sets that profile. So if you were to set it to guided reading, when a student clicks into the book, by default, it'll be set to the guided reading mode. So that audio will be turned off, the recording, things like that. Teacher notes. So did you want to mention teaching notes, Kate?
Yeah, so what you can do is, this is where you can write some notes to the students or to the group, depending on how you've set up your session. So you might ask them to have a focus on a particular sound, perhaps, that's in a book. You could put some comprehension questions in there. You could ask them to give you an author response, or as a reader, what their response to the book was. And when you create a note, it will appear on the student's bookshelf for them. So maybe, Nick, can we just put in some dummy text?
Yeah.
We might flicker over to the bookshelf just to see that note. So this is a very useful way, particularly if you're in a situation at the moment where you're teaching remotely and students are learning from home. So this is a nice way of being able to assign books to groups or to students and put a note in for them as a reading focus, perhaps, or a learning intention.
Before we jump over something that isn't super obvious, but we have these session start and end date, which we found very useful last year to teachers, where you can actually set when this session should start and when it should end. So potentially you wanted to set up a session for the last week of August, you could set that start and end to be a different date and time than that default, and that would make it so you can be planning multiple sessions for a group as well. So you could have one that's meant to go for this week, one for next week, one for the week after, and not be having to come back in every week to set those up. Just for this one, I'm going to set it as starting today. Yeah, create that session.
And it's just worth keeping in mind too that when you're using that note feature, if you've got a group of students, everybody in that group will see the content of that note. So if it was something specific for just one student, it's probably better just to sort of put them in an individual session and send them a note, just that's personalized for them.
Yeah, so I've just refreshed my bookshelf, logged in as Connor, and you can see it's just brought in that session note. It has the one book, just indicating it's a guided reading session down here as well. Click into that, it's going to open up the book preview, and then you can jump straight into reading it. And yeah, as I said, I put guided reading profile, so recording will be turned off. If you wanted students to record, you just need to set that as independent in there, or the student can switch over, but it's easier to set it for them. Just want to check to see. There we go. Close that book. So now over in viewing sessions, I can just refresh this and yeah, you'll be able to see. That didn't come through for a reason, but yeah, had it open for 0.2 of a minute. And now instead of being an unopened, I'm in that open section.
So I think this was it was a very quick whirlwind tour of the management system and the bookshelf. And Nick, is there anything else that you wanted to highlight or feature before perhaps the last 5 minutes, 4 minutes?
I think we'll probably jump into questions. Just to check quickly to see that we haven't gone over anything that was in our notes.
We have a lot of questions in the question and answer section.
Yes.
So we won't have time to answer all of them live. However, what we'll do is we will make a frequently asked questions page and we will link to that in our email that we send you when we send you the recording, which will be in 1 to 2 weeks' time. So we'll go through a few of the questions quickly now. And then for all the questions we don't have time for, we'll definitely answer them for you and send them through. So the first question is, can students and parents see a log of the books that they've already read?
Yeah, so the closest thing that we have done, it's actually come up just recently, would be on the iPad. When I was showing that there was those titles that had the little cloud symbol and weren't immediately available to read. So yeah, that would be the easiest way, is just as those books are downloaded, then you know that you've already accessed them before. We have got a feature in the backlog to investigate, having like a reading history so you can go back and visit, but at the moment you can't.
Perfect. The next question is, can teachers see the books whilst they're listening to a student's recording?
Yeah, so the easiest way at the moment to do that is by going back out to the subscriptions area, and you can go into use and search for the book title. But there's no way to be able to see it in the management system, but it is something that is an improvement for the future.
Some of my students are not able to record because the record button is grey, it's not highlighted.
Yeah, so that can be, as you saw there, I had a session set up as guided reading. So it could be that the default when you create a session is guided reading, so you might not have switched that over to independent. If it's from the bookshelf, then I think our help has a couple of things around, if students have blocked microphone access on the web browser, you only ever get asked once, so you'll have to go and re-enable that. And the same thing for iPads as well. They have that blocking of microphone.
Can the students record their voices on wordless texts?
Yes, if you have, there's no feature to turn off the recording in that custom mode, so you could still have recording of the page.
Can we export the data onto a spreadsheet?
Yeah, that's been coming up a fair bit. We're doing some investigation into reporting, actually working with one of our bigger customers to figure out what reporting they need. But at the moment, you have to view it through the management system.
Perfect. Sorry. Kate, you might be able to answer this one best. Are the benchmarking assessment sheets available to match the books on the bookshelf?
No, they're not, because they're part of the PM benchmark kits. And so the benchmark books are in, we do have software for the benchmarking, but that's separate to PM eCollection. So these are your specifically created guided reading and independent reading texts that are outside the benchmarking.
Perfect. Thank you so much, everyone. We've just hit 4:30. So unfortunately, we've run out of time. But as I said before, we will answer all of your questions and we'll make sure that we send those all through to you in 1 to 2 weeks' time. Thank you so much, everyone.